Tonight on the All Kinds Weather Forecast, we recap the heartbreaking loss in Knoxville. The Gators fall in overtime after a hard-fought game. We talk about the game and where the Gators go from here the rest of the 2024 season. This is the In All Kinds Weather Forecast. And welcome in to another episode of the In All Kinds Weather Forecast. I am your host, Chris Yanes, alongside my co-host, Neil Schulman, here in the heart of Gator Nation. A Gator Nation recovering from a hurricane to its state, and a Gator Nation reeling from another rivalry loss. Now, 9 of the last 10 rivalry games. We'll talk about why that is here in just a moment. But before we get to all that, for all of our watchers on YouTube, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button down below, hit that like button, and leave a comment, your reaction to the Gators' heartbreaking overtime loss in Knoxville. Let us know your thoughts. Sound off, Gator Nation. We want to hear and feel your pain. And of course, if you're listening on our audio formats, make sure to rate and review the show. Leave us a 5-star review. It helps us bring Gator Nation more great content. And finally, want to thank and shout out our sponsor, 401k Generation, the wealth management company that helps you invest today for your future tomorrow. Their team of advisors is committed to providing guidance and education for your 401k plan and its participants. They also offer a range of enrollment solutions tailored to meet the unique needs of your company's 401k plan. Whether it's saving for your child's college, investment advice, or even your retirement, 401k Generation's team of advisors makes getting to know you their top priority. Their advisors will tailor a path to assist you in navigating life's financial milestones and reaching your financial goals. 401k Generation, building stronger futures, one generation at a time. For more information, contact them at 866-998-5879 or visit their website at 401kgeneration.com. Shout out 401k Generation. Shout out Eddie Roadhouse and his team over there. Good people to work with. Unfortunately, Neil, I'm not so sure the head coach we're working with right now is good to work with. We'll really get it and deep dive into that tonight.
He's a good person. No. The transition should have been unlike our current football coach, Eddie Rojas is a good person and provides a good product.
Yes, the product on the field is not so good. The Gators, none. I don't think there's a game that encapsulates exactly what you just said, Neil, more so than the 23-17 overtime loss to the Tennessee Volunteers. This is only the 4th time the Gators have lost in the last 20 years to the Tennessee Volunteers. Billy Napier is now the first coach since Ron Zook to lose 2 times in his tenure to the Tennessee Volunteers.
No, wait, it's the 3rd time we've lost in the last 20 years. 16,
Yes,
22,
you're right. You're right.
20.
So 4th time in 21 years, 3 times in 20 and 20. The second coach, or the first coach since Ron Zook to lose twice. Ron Zook, of course, lost 2 in a row in 03 and in 04. This one, though, the Gators should have won. They had 4 possessions inside the 20-yard line in which they came away with a grand total of, drum roll please, 0 points. 4 possessions, 9 plays run in the red zone, 0 points.
Well, no, they got 1 field goal out of it. 3 points. 0 touchdowns.
0 touchdowns. 0 touchdowns. There were 3 possessions where the Gators came away with no points, though. That's abysmal. The Gators, of course, we all know, dominated the statistical part of this game. They outgained Tennessee 361 to 312. They had more third down conversions, more first downs, more passing yards, a better completion percentage. They outrushed Tennessee in regulation until overtime. The final rush total was 143 to 138 Tennessee. Most of that, the difference coming in the overtime where Tennessee ran the football into the end zone. I said a padlock stack in this game was the Gator needed to run for 150. They probably would have done that if it weren't for the abysmal play calling by our head coach in this game. Florida would have probably won the turnover battle too if it weren't put into some difficult situations in this game. They dominated the time of possession. Florida dominated this game for all intents and purposes, did everything they needed to do to go on the road and get a win, and they failed to do it. And unfortunately, adding insult to injury, we'll talk about Graham Mertz toward the end of this show. But unfortunately, as we all know at the time of this recording on Monday night, suffered a season-ending knee injury. His Florida Gator career and his college career are now over, handing the keys over to true freshman quarterback DJ Lagway, who played admirably in this game, came back strong after his one interception deep in the Gators' territory, threw the game-tying touchdown pass with less than 30 seconds to go on a 3rd and long to Chimere DK, gave the Gators a chance despite the poor play calling and game management by its head coach. Neil, your reaction to the Gators' loss. Everybody shield themselves like Hurricane Milton is about to come through.
Aliens don't exist, Chris. That was my takeaway. We like to start our show with a nice little soundbite that gets people's attention, right? Yeah, aliens don't exist. I had a bit of an ideological breakthrough moment on Saturday night. I do not believe in extraterrestrial life. I am now 1,000,000% certain that life on other planets does not exist. And the reason I know that is because if they did, Billy Napier would have found a way for them to abduct DJ Lagway and just tractor beam him up into outer space and take him off of our roster. Because every single thing that Billy Napier touches turns to feces. Literally any and every element that he puts his hands in results in the worst possible outcome. He is the anti-King Midas. He has this magic ability to just touch something and instantly turn it into garbage. To say that I think so little or so lowly of him as a coach doesn't even come close to encapsulating it. I think so highly of his ability to simultaneously steal north of $7 million a year while destroying a once prestigious football program that I know for certain that if aliens did exist, Napier would have somehow found a way for them to literally just suck him up into outer space and out of the cosmos as he was rearing back to throw that touchdown pass to Chimere DK. I mean, I don't even know how it's possible. Maybe he pocket dials the aliens and sends the UFO his location, but he would find some way to make it happen if it was physically possible. So, all right, let's take a look at what he did. Let's just break it down one piece of idiocy at a time. And I'm going to skip the run of the mill stupidity that we don't even have time for, like the first 3rd and 1 QB sneak with 5.5 to go in the first quarter with Mertz that got a yard and not a nanometer more. Should have been Lagway running that. Got the first down by maybe half a nanometer. Or the 3rd and 1 a minute later out of the pistol, the man in motion again, slow developing, blown up for a 4-yard loss. There are literally dozens of objectively bad things that we can't even get into. We don't even have time for today because we want to keep the show to about an hour 15 or whatever. And we'd be here for 5 hours if I gave them each the time. So I'm going to skip through the bad decisions he made and focus on the outright terrible and catastrophic ones. And I think it really all boils down to the same element here in this cocktail of lethality for Florida football, in that Billy Napier is every bit as stubborn as Dan Mullen, except he has the brains of a raw potato. Like people asking me on Twitter if I think he's sabotaging the program on purpose. No, I don't. I just think he's dumb. I think his brain functions much more slowly and far less effectively than that of the average human being. But all right, the mistakes. I'll talk about that more later. Mistake number 1 is not making DJ Lagway the starting QB in this game, as was a mistake of Billy Napier's for each of the last 4 games. He should have been the starter starting with Stanford, which he was because Mertz was hurt, and then been the starter every single game from there on out. We'll touch on Mertz later. I respect what he's done for this program. Guts, grit, heart. He's smart. He's got brain power. I respect it. But as we've said 65,842 times before, Lagway is just a different athlete, which I think part of Napier knows because he recruited him here. He's bigger. He outweighs Mertz by a full 25 pounds of muscle. He's faster. Mertz is a willing and gutsy runner, but Lagway smokes him in the 40. He throws a much better deep ball. Mertz just doesn't have that in his toolkit, and he's a freshman. He can learn not just from year to year, but probably even as the season goes along, he can learn from game 1 to game 12. Because if you're going to say, well, Napier's going to get fired, so what does he care if he grooms a freshman for the next coach? Well, he can grow from game 1 to game 7 and be a much better quarterback within a 6-game span because he is smart. He's a smart kid. He's just young. So yeah, I know he's raw, but that's called an investment for the rest of the season. So if Napier was actually serious about being here long term, he would have gone to Lagway for that reason, that he could come back and be even better next year. But even if not, it's a good investment for the rest of this year. But he didn't do that because Napier's brain is made of marshmallow fluff. And he thinks that because Mertz is a good guy and a 6-year senior, that alone justifies giving him the start and playing the majority of the snaps, despite having far less to offer from an athletic standpoint than DJ Lagway. And that paved the way to what I believe was the worst called Gator football game of my lifetime. So we'll start with the 4th and inches. I don't know. I don't get it. The last time he faced a 3rd and short was the pistol handoff I touched on a second ago. Blown up, loss of 4 or 5, which to
incredibly
Billy,
predictable. It's predictable at this point because there's so many tells in the motion, the pre-snap motion, that every defensive coordinator in America down to the middle school level could probably predict it.
Right. That's I mean. There were about 25 to 30 play calls that I just could not stand, but there were 2 that really stick out that I think everyone knows. That was one of the 25 that I thought were dumb. But anyway, point being, on that 3rd and 1, he runs that pistol handoff that gets blown up, which to him is probably the most basic high floor, low ceiling play call there is on 4th and short, which it's not, because you can QB sneak or QB power out of shotgun. Either one of those are better. But anyway, that didn't work. So what is in Billy Napier's mind the most elementary, basic, fundamental, simple play call he has doesn't work. So when the 4th and inches comes around, his simple mind goes to the following thought process. Well, okay, so the most bland thing in my playbook didn't work. Fans probably didn't like that, right? I can't do a Napier impression, but imagine in Napier's voice with his mannerisms. Well, all right, that didn't work. Fans probably thought that was way too predictable. Well, I'll show all those elaborate rural Central Florida basement dwellers just how unpredictable I can be. How about this? How about let's do the most complicated thing that's left in my arsenal after I made the really difficult decision to retire that 3 free unblocked defenders taking a free shot on my QB double reverse play against FSU last year. After I made the heart-wrenching decision to scrap that play, this is the most crazy and unpredictable thing left. Let's try the most complex, fancy, flashy, and risky thing left with a man of motion again, sure, and then ask our 239, I think, pound freshman quarterback to make a live read against the number 2 rush defense in the country to decide whether or not we gain half a foot. By the way, against a 4-man front. No. The answer is no. That's one of the stupidest play calls I've ever seen. And I'm not even exaggerating. Well, what if it works? Is it still a stupid play call then?
Yes.
Yes, it is still a brainless play call if it works, because you are asking a ridiculously physically talented kid to execute in one of his few areas of weakness, which is snap-second decision-making with a read. And even if Lagway was good at that, it still gives the number 2 rush defense in the country more time to swarm into the backfield and blow it up. So even if it works, you got lucky, because it would be Lagway providing you with the exception and not the rule. It would be a low percentage play that happened to work, like in basketball, for example, when early in the first half, guy chucks up a contested 3 with 22 on the shot clock left, and it goes in. It worked. Was it a bad shot? Yes, it was. It was a objectively stupid decision to hoist that shot up. It worked, and you're going to remember it for going in, but it is still an objectively dumb decision. You cannot objectively count on that to happen for you. You cannot realistically, reasonably, or logically believe that that gives you the best chances of gaining what you need to gain on this particular play. It is far more realistic, reasonable, and logical to expect that utilizing one of the things that your generational athlete at QB does do well, like use his 239 frame, or in other situations, I'm speaking more generically now, his speed or his deep ball. Sensing a theme here, use what your guys do well to your advantage. It's much more realistic, reasonable, and rational to expect that utilizing one of your QB's, one of your generational talents, strengths will work out for you. And I don't know, maybe one of those things is falling forward for 6 inches. How hard of a concept is that to take the biggest quarterback on your roster with the biggest amount of muscle mass to literally just fall down forward for 6 inches with either, you have two options here, either in a sneak with Montrell Johnson helping push him, or out of the shotgun on one of those old school like Tebow power plays type of things. So we can take the snap, start moving forward, start building up some momentum, some torque, and now also he has a half second to find the biggest gap and crash through it. He doesn't have forever. He doesn't have the 10 seconds it takes to develop these man in motion plays, right? These window dressings that take 20 seconds to develop, but he has a split second to decide where he's going to crash through. And again, built up some momentum. He's built up some steam that can carry him through a defender and over the first down line.
It befuddles me, Neil, that teams now have had 3 years of tape that watching the Philadelphia Eagles run the tush push.
Ridiculous.
More teams don't do it.
It works.
It's almost a 90% success rate play on any basically yard and a half situation. All it requires, the snap count because you have the advantage of that. You either A, will draw them off sides, or B, get the first down because the snap count, fire off the ball and push everybody forward a yard and a half. It works 9 times out of 10. And the fact that more teams in football don't do it is incredible. And it doesn't require to have an all-pro center Hall of Famer Jason Kelce to run the play. Almost any center in America can run the play. So I don't even actually like the shotgun with the quarterback where he takes the snap and then has to run 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage to get then 6 yards.
It's preferable to what we did.
But I didn't even like it in the Tebow era, quite frankly. It actually, even back then, I know it worked most of the time, but I actually liked the idea of just putting the quarterback behind the center, snapping the ball, and getting a push from your running back. It's a legal play. Do it more often. So I just don't understand it.
All right, another option I could live with is a quick handoff to Montrell Johnson.
Still would have been a better play call.
Not one of those window dressing plays where you have where you have a guy in motion to see what the defense is gonna do. Are they in man or are they in zone for a play that you only need 6 inches on? A quick handoff to Montrell Johnson, who, by the way, shout out to him too.
Played a great game.
Dude ran angry against Tennessee. He ran pissed off at that defense. So all the respect in the world to him too. Anyway, yes, there was that. And one more thing. Also, late in the game, after you've shown the HB dive play a few times in short yard situations, you can try a little surprise out of that same tight formation by pulling the ball away on a play action rollout and seeing if Lagway...
Which it worked the next time they ran it. On the next third and short, they ran it, and it actually worked.
Yeah. So that's another something you can have in your arsenal. And then once in a blue moon, like I'm talking once every 2 or 3 seasons, you can try a jump pass. That's it. Those are the only plays that you should ever run out of a 3rd and half a yard or less, or 4th and half a yard or less, or even 3rd and a yard or less, or 4th and a yard and less. The QB sneak can get a yard. Reasonably, reliably, and fairly consistently, that QB sneak play with a 239-pound monster at quarterback can get you 36 inches of ground. I don't care if DJ Lagway made a bad read. I don't care if the guard was supposed to pull and he didn't, which created a 2-on-3 situation, 2 Florida blockers on 3 Tennessee defenders. I don't care. It is a moronic play call. It is asking for way too many things to happen, way too many assignments for too many people that need to be done too well just so we can get 6 inches. That was
Yep.
the worst possible time to try to show creativity. In that
Yep.
specific situation, you just got to go with pure muscle and get 6 inches the ugly way on a sneak. Now, it's 1st and 10. Damian George doesn't pull. All right, fine. Then it's an instance of an acceptable play call and bad execution. So, all right, that's that play. We beat that one to death. How about the 1st and goal where Mertz fumbles? This is catastrophic decision number two. It's bad decision number like 13 in the game that I thought, but it's catastrophic decision number two. Mertz should have protected the ball better. It's true. He might have been down. It was really close to his
Bang
shin
bang.
being down. It doesn't
Calling
matter.
the field stud.
Very
So,
close. Doesn't even matter. Should have been Lagway on the QB sneak. Again, he has
or give it
20.
to Johnson, on the
Yeah,
1 yard line, who the play before ran it down to the 1 yard line.
almost scored.
Had an
Beat the
explosive run
ball
play.
out. God, I wish he just had it. I wish his wingspan was another 6 inches. That's a touchdown. Yeah, right. Should have been Lagway on the QB sneak. I mean, in that case, I don't even want to hand the ball off. I want to eliminate any potential for F up. Don't. I mean, we saw Tennessee fumble in exchange. Just go forward. Just take the snap and fall forward. It's really not that complicated. I I don't care what you thought. I don't care what Billy thought justified Mertz taking that snap. I don't
Well, it was
care.
his turn. It was his turn. Now, and I guess that's
Yeah,
the problem with the quarterback rotation is we did it. It was not situational. It was just scripted in that it was 2 for 1 every single time, no matter what. I mean, here's the thing, and I thought about this too. If let's say for instance, Merch doesn't get hurt, and on the final drive where Lagway throws the game tying play with 30 seconds left, if it wasn't Lagway's turn, or if it was Mertz's turn, or I'm sorry, the other way around, it was Lagway's turn. Like, how do you square that peg in a round hole? Because
you
Mertz
don't.
threw the only touchdown in the game before that. So technically, he was the hotter hand, the more experienced quarterback, which is the argument to play Mertz over Lagway in that situation. So I think at the end of the day, this game, unfortunately, showed why the two quarterback system long term wouldn't work, especially in a close game because it wasn't situational.
Which, by the way,
Breeze,
I said was going to be exactly what happened. I said it very clearly. I don't care if it works against Mississippi State. I don't care if it works against Central Florida. It's not going to work when you play the brunt of your SEC schedule on a week-to-week basis. And Tennessee's not even that good. We
no,
saw, I mean, they made a lot of mistakes. Now, they're better than Mississippi State and Central Florida. I think they'll have a puncher's chance to beat Alabama and Georgia, probably because those two teams don't look so invincible themselves. But Tennessee's not the best team Florida's going to play the rest of the way. Tennessee
not as good
probably
as the team as we thought they were a couple weeks ago.
no, they're probably fourth or fifth in terms of the best teams Florida's got left in their schedule in their last 7 games. So let's make this very clear. It is obviously different types of talent at quarterback. Graham Mertz versus Kyle Trask, very different, but it's the same kind of thing where it takes a horrific injury to the starting quarterback, or I should have said Graham Mertz to Felipe Franks. It takes a catastrophic injury to the starting quarterback that you're so loyal to for you to play the objectively better quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
It should not ever come to that. I don't care. And listen, I want to say this once and for all. It's over now because Lagway is the guy, but I'm going to say this and then make peace with it. Billy, this is for you for your next job when you inevitably get fired here. I don't care if Merch is the 6-year senior. I don't care if it's his turn. I don't care if he won some extra brownie points because he signed 2 more autographs for kids this week than DJ Lagway. I don't care if he flushes the toilet better than DJ Lagway. I do not give a tenth of a squirt of piss what your reasoning is. It was the wrong decision, and you need to understand that it was the wrong decision, or you're going to continue to fail everywhere else you go. If Lagway fumbles the ball like Mertz did at the 1 yard line, at least then you could rest easy at night knowing that you went with your better athlete to try to achieve a task that requires 0 experience or football IQ and 100% strength and quickness and speed and athleticism. and he's a freshman who can learn from it.
Yep.
So, like, dude, you got to figure this out if you ever want to have any chance at being a head coach ever again. You got to understand that, yes, football is about people and loyalty is an aspect of it that should be considered, but sometimes you can't overthink things and you just got to go with what the better expected value is. And DJ Lagway, again, even if he fumbled the ball away, you went with what your higher expected value was, and it just backfired. You did not do what was objectively the worst expected value, the lower expected value, and have it backfire. That's the distinction.
Yep. I think just to kind of hone this in a little bit more, and let's get maybe a little bit back more to the analytical piece. Obviously, Neil, emotional about this. I'm emotional too about this. I couldn't really sleep after the game. I was sick to my stomach. And really, I think the reason I was sick to my stomach, though, was the fact that it dawned on me, Neil, that we have talent at Florida. We have good football players playing in the orange blue this season. Talent is not the problem. It is coaching. Coaching, the staff in general is not strong enough. The decision making and their inability to do what's right for a football team is showing up in a big way right now because this game had all the hallmarks of what we've come to know and has encapsulated the 3-year tenure of Billy Napier. Terrible play calling and key moments like what you just talked about. We had a special teams faux pas with the
Oh, I didn't even talk about that one.
Yep.
Jesus. Yeah.
The illegal substitution before halftime where we had a fire drill to get everybody on the field as the clock is running down in that situation. You can't take a sack in that situation. That's on Mertz right there. He took a bad sack, which highlights the fact of why he probably Napier wasn't going to be or Lagway should be the guy at the quarterback position. We had clock management issues, which partially happened at that time. But how many timeouts did we call in the wrong situation throughout the entire game, both in the first and second half, which would have been precious timeouts to have late in the game, which could have resulted in a higher point total for us. We had penalties at big moments in the game, which were huge against us. A lot of procedural false starts and holdings that set us behind the 8 ball when we were near the red zone. And honestly, Neil, I know in the moment and I know why you didn't agree with Napier going for 2 is because you don't think he was smart enough to come up with the correct play call. That's a solid argument, but he probably should have gone for 2 because Tennessee had the momentum in the second half. You scored there on that 30 with 30 seconds to go. You actually had a time, you had a pause, a timeout to get the play call in that you needed in that situation. Honestly, he probably should have just gone for the 2-pointer in that situation. There would have been a higher chance for us to win the game in that situation. And you can give your thoughts on whether or not. And I know we've talked about it a little bit prior to this, but ultimately, the reason why we lost this game, it was all of the things that we've seen from this coaching staff and specifically Billy Napier for 3 years: bad play calling, special teams mess up, clock management issues, bad penalties in critical moments. And Billy Napier, who came to this school saying scared money don't make money, has coached like a scared man his entire time here.
So many things there. Well, I guess I'll go backwards. How about for that catchphrase? How about the fact that it's Josh Heupel going for it inside his own red zone and picking up a first down?
It was scare money don't make money. I'm gonna be honest. That was a stupid decision. You never go for it like that.
But that's at least all right. Yes, it was. But that's at least living up to your mantra. If Napier were to do that again, wrong decision. I'd criticize him for it
because if he didn't get that, Tennessee would have lost the game.
And if he did that and failed, yes. But again, if he does it with DJ Lagway at quarterback, there's a higher chance of it working out. Sure. So, sure. All right, there's that. Yeah, going for 2. It's not just because I think Napier is dumb and is not a good play caller. I think that is softening my argument a bit. It is because I think so lowly of Napier as a play caller. Like I said at the start of the show, he's the anti-Midas. Whatever he touched turns to trash. I feared that what he was going to do on that 2-point play was he was going to pull out that double reverse trick play that he used against FSU, except this time it would get DJ Lagway killed. And then we would go from 2 quarterbacks who could play to 0 in the span of one night. Like I said, I am conditioned by past results to believe that every single thing Billy Napier does is going to end in the worst possible outcome. I don't have any data to counter that argument. You can say I'm being emotional. I'm going to say he's 9-17 against Power 5 opponents. And by the way, that stat makes him look better than he is. That 9-17 is actually a more generous reflection of who he is as a coach than if you actually look into that. Because real quick, Mississippi State that got blown out by Toledo, Vanderbilt, a Texas A&M team that was completely checked out at the end of Jimbo Fisher's tenure, a Central Florida team that is Power 5 in name only. It is a directional school, and it is a historically group of 5 school who's in an even worse situation than we are. So 9 wins is giving him more credit than he probably realistically deserves. He's had 2 wins at Florida that are actually worth celebrating. Utah in his first game ever and Tennessee a year ago. And speaking of Utah, a year ago, I could swear that on this very show, I said that Napier made a huge mistake that he got bailed out of in that game at the very end with about 2.5 minutes to go with his timeout management. He bleeds the clock all the way down and then calls a timeout before a 4th down play. Now, why in the hell would you do that? If Utah goes down and scores, which they almost did, you were probably going to want that timeout. Either you bleed the clock all the way down before taking the snap, or you call it immediately. You don't waste 40 seconds and a timeout. That's what I said 2 years ago. I got criticized for being negative because Florida just beat a top 10 team. Why aren't you happy, bro? Napier's the guy. Well, that's a great start, but that's a little concerning. I don't know that that's really giving me confidence in his ability to call games and just CEO the whole operation down the stretch. 2.5 years, 2.5 seasons later, and oh, look where we are right now. It's almost like I wasn't being negative and was actually just being realistic and honest about what my own 2 eyes were telling me. So there's that. And then special teams. I mean, I have no words, really. I have to address it, but all right, look, I said after the South Carolina game 2 years ago when Florida won 38-6 that Napier needs to hire a special teams coach immediately. Like, he needs to have someone help him run the special teams the next week against Vanderbilt. Because I know we won 38-6, but in that game, you muff a punt, you get a field goal blocked, you can't even get the hold down for another one, you give up a 40-yard punt return, you have multiple penalties on your special teams, including a face mask, and you give up a fake punt for a touchdown. I don't care that you won 38-6. That's not good. You should probably do something to address that. You don't. What happens the next week? Adam Mahalik misses a PAT, and Jason Marshall fumbles a punt away for a touchdown in his own end zone. Florida should have hired a special teams coordinator immediately following the season for 2023. Napier did not do that. He insisted that he knew what was best all along, that his 2 offensive line coach approach was going to result in the operation being the best it could be, which, by the way, the offensive line did well against Tennessee. It's still not elite enough to justify. I mean, there has never been a single game that the offensive line has been elite enough and the special teams has been adequate. Both of those 2 things together that could justify that coaching lineup being the way it is. Both of them, not one. You need both of those things to be the case. Special teams cannot be a liability, and the offensive line has to be elite. Not good, not even very good, elite. Otherwise, it doesn't justify you organizing your staff that way. Billy Napier has not done a damn thing to fix his special teams. I don't want to give him credit for hiring Joe Houston because he is another analyst, an off-field coach who is, I mean, it doesn't really work this way, but for all intents and purposes, in the same kind of a role on a support staff basis as Savannah Bailey for Gator Made. which is just not acceptable. And like I said, that's not a direct comparison. They do very different things, but he's not one of those staffers that you only have a finite space for on your coaching staff. He only and by the way, only after he was hired to be the glorified babysitter for Chris Couch, only after Napier made that move, were off-field analysts allowed to actually have more of a role in the day-to-day operations. So Napier actually got lucky in that case. And anything that we have seen from the special teams that's worked out this year, which generally has been better until this, anything we've seen is because the NCAA gave Napier a lifeline. This is unacceptable to happen once, where your special teams can't even run onto the field correctly to substitute for a field goal one time, ever. That's unacceptable to happen once. For it to cost you a game against a 2-6 Arkansas team at home with a 30-year-old wide receivers coach calling the first game of his life, by the way, another data point for Napier, for it to happen once is unacceptable. For it to happen then, and for you to not spend your entire offseason in spring ball and in summer ball every day practicing that fire drill over and over and over again until you can literally be woken up from a drunken stupor and perform it to perfection. Until you are at that point, you cannot ever assume that it is going to not happen again. And you need to do everything and anything in your power to stop it from happening again. Clearly, that didn't happen because while, yes, the special teams has been better this year to some extent, Joe Houston does deserve credit for that. I don't care if special teams operations were perfect from game one to the fourth quarter of the FSU game, and we blocked 12 kicks and returned 17 kicks for touchdowns. For that to ever happen again is completely unacceptable. But it's also exactly what I'd expect from Napier. Because, like I said, anything he puts his hands on will turn to garbage. That is who he is, and that is how he is going to be remembered at Florida. I hereby yield. Go ahead.
Well, Neil, I mean, no, I think you bring up a lot of good points, certainly in a passionate way. I think this is kind of why I'm on here to maybe distill all that and kind of, frame it in a certain way so our fan base can understand it in a different way. But the bottom line is Napier just has not gotten the job done here. And this game to me encapsulates all of that and the things that you've talked about in great length that I talked about in some of the points before that segment there. The bottom line is this game, if you didn't have any, if you weren't on the fence potentially still that Napier wasn't the guy at Florida, I don't know what more you need to see that to show that he is the guy. Because if you continue to have him as your head coach, you are going to continue to be disappointed with similar results like this, where you outplay a team that is ranked higher than you, that is favored over you, and you're going to come up short and be disappointed every single time. So, I mean, bottom line, I mean, we're now halfway through the schedule. We're 3-3, where a lot of people probably thought we'd be at this point. We're on track for the Vegas total to be right around that over under 4.5 wins. Right now, we've got Kentucky ahead of us. Kentucky, as of actually now, Florida's power ranking on ESPN FPI actually went up in this game, believe it or not. So much so that they are now a 60-40 favorite to beat Kentucky. Last week before the game, the Tennessee game, they were a 50-50, slight 50.4% favorite to beat Kentucky. I haven't actually looked at the opening line. I have it right here. Let me
It
just
was
look at
two
it.
and a half for Kentucky, and it's down to one.
Gators are actually a 1-point favorite now.
Yes.
They
Florida was a 2.5 point favorite. It's
yeah,
down to one.
down to one. So it is it's essentially now a pick 'em at home against a team that Florida has not beat since 2020. They then play the number 5 Georgia team 2 weeks after that, the number 1 team on the road the following week, number 8 LSU at home, and number 18 Ole Miss at home before finishing the season at Tallahassee, which I would imagine right now probably a favorite against. Florida right now is a 67% chance to win, according to ESPN FBI. So that would put, if Florida was able to win both the Kentucky and Florida State game, 5 wins right on the over. If you avoided the over this year, you might be able to cash that in. But still, that is not the Gator standard at the end of the day. Florida needs to be winning a lot more football games than 5 games a season. We deserve better as a program. So, Neil, I think that's where we need to shift the focus to, because I don't think there's much more we need to see You and I both called for his. We both said we were out on Napier after Miami. We both thought that the firing actually was going to come after the embarrassing home loss to Texas A&M. It did not. Probably would have ensued, I would imagine, if we had lost to Mississippi State. Of course, we then reeled off 2 wins against very inferior teams, as we've seen now. Mississippi State continuing to lose. They're going to probably be in a free fall for the remainder of the season. UCF, now that we've seen, they've now lost 3 in a row. A very middle of the pack, if not below average Big 12 team.
Thank God we won that one, man.
I mean,
Nothing else. Thank God. Thank God we at least won that one.
yeah. Well, I mean, maybe we'll be able to get a win over a rival at the end of the season. Florida has lost 90% of its rivalry games in the Billy Napier era. That has got to be the worst in
It
school
is.
history.
By the way, yeah, it is the worst. I researched that. I was gonna say
Did
that
Josh did
earlier.
Josh Cody win more games against his rivals than
He
Billy
didn't play as
Napier?
many. He didn't play as
Okay,
many.
well, not enough
So
of a
yeah,
sample size, but moderate.
having played a minimum of 10 rivalry games, which Napier has coached himself, or
Officially in 10
Napier has
games.
coached in exactly 10.
Yep.
So for any full-time non-interim Gator football coach to coach in a minimum of 10 rivalry games, for those who don't know, that's FSU, that's Georgia, that's Tennessee, that's LSU, and that's Miami. For the sake of my research here, when I did this, I included Auburn because Auburn was a yearly rival back in the day. So I guess if Napier, well, no, it was Florida
In the
Auburn.
90s, yeah.
My Gator grandpa. The reason I'm a Gator raised me on the idea that, yeah, he raised me on the idea that Florida Auburn used to be what Florida Tennessee is now, which was like in the early
That's
2000s.
true because the Florida Tennessee rivalry wasn't an annual rivalry until 1990.
So I included Florida Auburn in that tally, which actually helped some of the coaches that um, I looked at. But anyway, yeah, you're wondering there is accurate. It is the worst. It is verifiably the worst record any Gator coach has ever had against their rivals. So congrats, Billy. You did accomplish something in Florida.
And to put that in perspective, Urban Meyer in 6 years lost a grand total of 2 rivalry games.
Well, all right. We're also not including LSU in that.
No, no,
LSU.
no, no. Traditional rivals: Georgia, Tennessee, Florida State, Miami. Traditional rivals in the modern day of the University of Florida. He lost two. Lost to Georgia
So then
once,
Napier is
and he
one and
lost to
seven.
Florida.
So then Napier, we gotta be fair. Fair.
Okay, one
He's
and
one and
seven
seven.
is still terrible. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
eight,
sure.
like less than like 15% or somewhere around there. I mean, it's terrible.
It's 12.5%.
Okay, so that's pretty bad. It's
Pitiful.
it's pretty bad. The only one was a home win against Tennessee last year. And honestly, I don't think he'll beat Georgia this year. And Florida State, I mean, slight favorite. So at best, he maybe gets two if he even lasts that long. I don't know. I think at this point, the administration, the boosters, if they haven't made their mind up already, they need some soul searching because I don't ever want to go to bed again after a rivalry game and think, you know what? We have enough talent but we're being inadequately coached and led in our football program. And that's the way I feel right now. I feel helpless because, and I think the players feel helpless, Neil. And that's when apathy truly begins to set in. That's when you lose a locker room. That's when things can really unravel really, really quickly. And I mean, the bottom line is the way that the schedule works now in the offseason of college football, you've got to keep these guys bought into the idea of being a Gator and being at the University of Florida. It is so much harder to do that now because of NIL, because of the transfer portal. Billy Napier is a lame duck coach. We know that. He's not going to be the head coach, whether he's fired after this game against Kentucky if the Gators lose or at the end of the season after Florida State. Highly, highly doubt that Billy Napier will be the head football coach at the University of Florida next season. So, bearing that in mind, that would mean there's going to potentially be a fallout of you having a lot of players leaving the program at the end of the season, transferring to other programs. A lot of guys maybe with 1, 2 years of eligibility left that want a chance at winning something in their college careers and being developed into a pro football player. They can do that elsewhere now with NIL opportunities and other transfer portal opportunities. So keeping these guys somewhat bought into the logo is going to be super important for whoever we hire as the next head football coach. So, and because they're not going to have enough time really to be able to get guys through the portal, to get guys through the recruitment high school ranks. I mean, we already lost 2 commits in the last week, one to Syracuse and one to, of course, Miami. bad. And those were two four-star commitments that we lost right there. Some outlets had those players ranked in the top one in the top 100, one in the top 250 at positions of need. It's not great. And I think that's not going to be the last one. You've got guys that are taking visits to other schools. Like this thing can continue to spiral out of control and get worse. You've got to stop the bleeding. And I really think the only way to do that now is to part ways with Napier in the bye week before Georgia. Let somebody take over the program that cares about the logo. I talked about and I've advocated for a guy like Mike Peterson on staff, who was a Gator at this program, he played for the University of Florida, won a national championship, play in the NFL. He cares about the long-term outlook for this program. Let a guy like that lead the program for the remainder of the season,
Or
and then let
Brandon
the chips.
Spikes,
Yeah, but I mean, I like that idea. I think Brandon obviously I think could do a great job.
young
Hope Brand.
energy. Young
Yeah,
energy is what I'm looking for.
for sure.
I don't care about experience because it's very clear that Napier's experience at Louisiana didn't do him any good. So I
Yeah.
don't care about that. I
And
want
Jeff
young energy.
Saturday, he was an interim at the Colts, and I think that's kind of like the equivalent of this. Somebody with no head coaching,
Yeah.
no coaching experience whatsoever, steps in, takes over. I could see it, and I wouldn't be upset about it. I think the big thing is that you got to keep the glue of this program together because the it's going to come undone if you don't do something about it here shortly. Because, like I just mentioned. Four of the next five opponents are top 20 teams. Three of them are ranked in the top 10. Three of them could be in the college football playoff. I mean, this is serious. Like, I mean, I do think a successful coach could come in here and win immediately, but there are going to be some really painful short-term effects if not done correctly. So we've got to get this thing corrected. This game against Kentucky this weekend is going to be really pivotal and all of that. But regardless, it's Napier's gone. And I think like this cloud is hanging over the program now where everybody knows it. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. We want this to just be over. And that's really sad. That's a really sad state to be in now. We're halfway through the season. And I think a lot of Gator fans almost just want the season to be over with.
I'm
That's the way
building
I
as a
feel.
squad, by the way, across the street in the O'Connell Center. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Like that's the
Shout out to the
focus.
number 21 ranked AP preseason team right now.
Right. And we'll talk about them more this year than we have in previous years because I've asked fans that literally when people comment or stop me in games or whatever and say, hey, I recognize you from YouTube. I mean, great. What would you think if we covered basketball more? Yeah, 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 yeah. Do it, do it, do it. They're good. Yeah, do it. They're better than this clown show of a program. So we're going to listen to you guys, and we're going to do that. So shout out to those of you who did that, and shout out to Todd Golden and Gator basketball. Something to look forward to.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, it'd be great to have the triumphant good again. Football, basketball, and baseball, and then of course throw softball and all the other great sports in there. Gymnastics, gymnastics continues to kill it on the recruiting trail. If anybody follows our recruiting handle at IOKW Recruiting, make sure you're following that. We give updates on all our sports here, but it's hard right now. And I think that the Gator fans' apathy is beginning to truly set into the program because Napier is remaining here. It's no disrespect to him. It's just unfortunate. He's not the guy for this job. We really and desperately want to move in. I think fans want to turn the page and start talking about the potential hires that we could potentially have. So, Neil, I think we'll probably need to do a little more research on that. And maybe as a show, we could come up with a list of guys that you and I would maybe like. That might be a good bye week segment to do after the Kentucky game is maybe we'll do a deep dive in some of our coaching preferences, and maybe we'll even have news at that point, depending on how the results go this Saturday. But I do think fans are looking for us to clearly turn the page. Like you just heard that feedback of more basketball. You know, I think also they want to probably be talking about the potential for who that next head coach is at the University of Florida. So, all right, Neil, I don't know how much more you want to go and breaking this game down. I think we kind of beat it to a dead horse and it's just the same old things. The Gators played their hearts out. The players are talented. They're just being out coached, right? Or they're not being coached adequately enough. So if you got nothing else, I think we should just give our grades and sign off for this episode.
One more thing. For all the disdain that I have for Napier as a coach, it really is not personal towards him. Like I said, people more than once, people have asked me throughout the year on Twitter, on the YouTube comments, at the stadium and tailgates, they've asked me, do you think Napier is sabotaging the program? No, I don't. I really don't. In part because I don't think he's intelligent enough to know how to do that. But no, I really don't. The target for that vitriol personally should be directed higher towards the guy who covered up an abuse scandal of his athletes in the women's basketball program and extended the guy. You want to talk about someone who's actually sabotaging the program? That's where you start your search. It's not Napier. I think he's just a very simple, you know what? That's just the best way to put it. I'm not going to say anything that's going to get us flagged for limited ads on YouTube. He's just simple. He's just not intelligent. He's probably got an IQ of less than 60. And, he's a savant when it comes to sales. He obviously sells his program very well. I don't know how he manages to do it, but it's pretty clear it's not going to keep up that way. But the results piling up like that, like autumn leaves. But that doesn't mean it's a personal thing towards him because it's really not. When he was first hired at Florida, my buddy Casey, who you guys know started the show initially with me in the height of COVID, and just recovering from cancer now. He'll be back with Tailgate Talk soon. But my buddy Casey went to an event and met him in Atlanta, maybe 2, 3 weeks after he was hired, and he introduced himself. And Napier said, "Oh yeah, and all kinds of weather. I recognize you. You guys did a big following, man. Keep up your good work." Like that's really cool. I'm not gonna sit here and BS you guys and say I don't care what the guy what the dumbest coach in Florida history thinks. That's objectively cool. And this is 3 years ago. This is before Chris, before you even came aboard. So that's awesome. It's just not working out. And it's just that simple. And there's just nothing more to it. And I do get frustrated. I do get angry on behalf of the players whose college careers have now been wasted, the upperclassmen specifically, who come to Florida dreaming of championships and have nothing to show for it. It's frustrating on their behalf to know that they put all this work in since they were 5 to get to this place and it's been taken away from them by an idiot of a head coach. But it's exactly that. It's an idiot of a head coach. It's not a bad person. It's not a criminal. It's not someone who probably should be labeled as a criminal like Strickland for the Neubauer abuse scandal. It's just someone who's not that bright. And that's how it is going to be remembered, and it's how it should be remembered.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I hope one day we just look back on this and honestly forget about it. I hope it's a forgotten era of football eventually that is covered over by multiple championships and success on the gridiron again. I think it's the only way we're going to really get past it. And because
Yeah.
the sad thing is, we've been looking to cover up the eras of the Muschamp eras and the McElwain eras and even parts of the Mullen era. But now I think a lot
Feel
of
for them
fans
now.
would love that again. And because we want a lot more football games. And yes, the schedule's changed. Yes, the schedule's more difficult. But honestly, I think a competent coach can win 8 to 9 games with the schedule. I really do. Because I do think that the roster is talented. Mertz is a good quarterback. Lagway obviously potentially could be generational. You've got a stable of running backs that are great in Jaden Baugh and Montrell Johnson, a receiving core that may be the best since the 2020, 2019 squads. There's a lot of talent here. And the defense, we hardly really talked about it, played their finest game yet of the season, holding Tennessee to 17 yards uh, I'm sorry, 17 points in regulation, forced 2 turnovers, first multi-turnover game all season dating back to last year. There was a lot of great things and a great effort put on by them, all gone to waste because of the ineptitude of the play calling and execution and decision making from our coaching staff here. So it's just a shame. I hope a lot of these defensive guys who are really young and still have eligibility left remain on this roster because I do think it is something we can build upon for next season, and hopefully they remain here and bought in for the remainder of these games so we can pull off some wins. But it's troubling. It's a really just tough time for the program, and I think we're just ready to ultimately turn the page. So Neil, let's turn the page on this episode and this game, and let's give our grades, and we'll get out of here.
Offense gets a C plus, and because the red zone issues have to be taken into account somewhat. I thought the offensive line played its best game of the year.
Yeah.
I thought that Montrell Johnson ran like a dude possessed. He gets credit for that. They're going to lose massive points because of the fumble and because of DJ Lagway's interception. Obviously, you can't have that. He's a freshman. He's going to learn from it, but that's just a terrible mistake in that moment. But they did put, I think, 360 or so on Tennessee, which is good. And I can't really blame the players on the offense for the coach's idiocy. So I'll give them a fairly neutral grade of C plus. It did enough to win. Defense, I really wasn't that impressed with the defense. I think it was okay. I think it was better than what we saw the rest of the year. I think it took the step from horrendous to just plain bad to now slightly below average, because Tennessee drove right down the field on us on their first possession and they fumbled the ball away. Nico Iamaleava messed up in exchange. That's not Florida forcing the fumble. That's not them putting a helmet on it or getting a paw in there and punching it out. That's just Tennessee messing up. Same with, by the way, when Nico had not one but two plays where he had a receiver through the secondary over the safety's head and he just missed them. Those are two touchdowns of 60 plus yards that he hits if he makes a good throw. Even a decent throw, it doesn't have to be perfect, just a good throw, even above average throw, and it's two touchdowns, and Tennessee has 125, 130 more yards to show for their day and probably a win in regulation with all the mistakes that we made. So I'll give them it was a passing grade. They get a C because it wasn't a failure. They did enough to win, but that's still not fantastic. Special teams, I mean, all right, I'll give them two grades. I'll give Chimere Dike his own grade because he was fantastic as a punt returner. He's going to get an A for himself. I guess, I mean, he would have gotten an A plus if he housed him or one of them. He gets an A. Fantastic. Excellent. Special teams as a whole, without him, gets an F. And they get a 0. They get that F where you have to just drop the class and change your major, drop out of college altogether and go work at McDonald's. Because I don't know how that ever happens once to begin with. But that play, even if Trace Mack makes that field goal in overtime, it would still be that F. Because that is such a catastrophic mistake that wasn't even made for the first time here. It was a repeat mistake from not a game where you were up 63-3, from a situation that literally lost you a game before. Coaching has a lot to do with that, but it's also the players, because it was the players who lined up with 12 people on the field. That's going to be a shared blame one. And for coaching, they're going to get this is a first and hopefully a last. They get a minus 100. The coaching staff was perfectly horrendous. They could not possibly have done more to hand this game to Tennessee than they did. I guess in theory, if Napier orders a punt instead of a field goal on the first overtime possession, I guess that could have been worse. Short of that, the coaching staff did everything they possibly could to lose this game, starting in the offseason by not hiring an offensive coordinator, by not hiring a special teams coach, by not forcing the special teams to practice the fire drill field goal situation 40 times a day from the first practice of spring to the last practice of fall, to the in-game to the pregame decision to not start DJ Lagway, to the decision several games ago to not start DJ Lagway, to the in-game play calls, and to the very end, to the decision to go for two. Like I said, I'm actually one of the few Gator fans not mad at that, because I am certain that Napier would have found some way to get DJ Lagway killed. So that is just how little faith I have in him. That is how much negative faith I have in him. That's how much faith I have in him to do the wrong thing. And I am at a point now where I am going to assume that literally every single thing that can possibly go wrong will go wrong. And if it doesn't, whoopee, hooray for minor victories and silver linings, because that is all that this program is ever going to achieve as long as Billy Napier is still here. And with that, I'm done. Take us home.
All right.
I'm
Well,
out of ammo now.
all right. Unloaded the chamber. So I got offense. I agree with that. C plus. I thought, obviously the red zone woes is pretty self-explanatory, and the turnovers you can't have happen. That's execution, regardless of play calling. That is execution on the players and both quarterbacks themselves in those situations, and ultimately did cost us 14 points really in that one because the interception led to a touchdown, and the dropped ball on the 1 yard line led to us not getting a touchdown. Defense. I'll give them a B plus. It was their best effort. 17 points in regulation. Nine times out of 10 should win you the game. You should be able to muster up more than 17 points in regulation more often than not. We should have in this game. Obviously, the red zone is what failed them. So I'm not going to take that away from the defense. They definitely deserved and earned our respect in this game, and
Okay,
I hope.
but very, very quick question. If Nico hits those two touchdown passes, does your grade change?
But he didn't. That's the fact. So he
He
didn't.
missed the throws. It wasn't because our
Okay.
defense put pressure on him. He just missed the throws.
End of the day, it didn't happen. So
All
that's
right.
that's my grade. I'm going to give him a B plus. I thought overall they did a great job. Special teams, I will give. I'm gonna go C, and that Chimerdike did salvage what was the worst special teams performance. Harken back to the first 2 years, but he saved it. And he set Florida up. And that the first one should have scored, didn't score. The second one set up the game tying score, which he did score himself. So that I think Chimerdike is pretty much, I would say, maybe the MVP of this team right now. The way he's performed up to the first 6 games of the season, by far one of the best transfers we brought in this offseason. Coaching, it is that F. It is awful. It was a terrible, terrible performance by far, maybe the worst coached game I've seen in the last 10 years at Florida. Did everything they could, like you said, Neil, to lose this game. It encapsulates everything that's wrong with Billy Napier and the staff. This tenure cannot be done soon enough. And it's unfortunate that I'm putting 98% of this loss on the coaching staff.
98, that's it?
I mean, you have to give at least some of the two, like you have to give the fact that we turned the ball over twice at critical moments of the game, backed up in our own territory and on the 1 yard line, more about the score. That's not on the coaching staff. That is on the players in those situations. Now,
It also should have been 30 to nothing when Lagway made that mistake, which would have been a consolation prize and not it
sure,
line back to.
agreed. But the fact is, was not the situation, and you have to protect the football accordingly. So, I mean that's why I'm going to put a little bit, just a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit. So 98%. I mean, that's still the lion's share of the blame here is on the coaching staff. So that F for that reason. But
I guess
this
Jordan
is
Castell did miss a tackle late too. That was pretty damaging.
Jordan Castell continues to leave a lot to be desired at the safety
That's but
position.
but 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 again, that's also on the coaches. They
Yes,
rely on him.
continuing to put him
That's
out there when
their
they should.
fault. At some point, I said I was out of ammo. I just reloaded again. Here we go again. If at some point, if you continue to have, well, this went wrong. Well, that went wrong. If he does this, we win. Well, if he does that, we win. If that goes right, then we win. Well, if that doesn't happen, we win. At some point, it's just who you are.
Oh no, he is. This is who he is. This is him. This is his coaching staff. This is what they are. They're not making here at Florida. End of discussion. This is I hate being in this position. I'm over it. I'm done with it. I am so ready to move on from this. I'm ready to talk about potential coaching hires. We will see what this weekend yields. We will preview the Kentucky game, the homecoming game in the coming days. But Neil, that wraps up the recap of the Tennessee game. I'm glad we're finally through this. We can move on with our lives and go on with the rest of our weeks.
You got a promotion at work, didn't you? That's a real life celebration.
Yeah, had some good news today at work, so that was good, and we'll keep grinding there, and so
See,
we'll keep.
things matter more than football. And I think
Yeah,
having a terrible football team makes you appreciate and realize that more. Like, I
yeah,
get to go home and be with my family for a few days for the Jewish holiday of Sukkot. It's just like you're just chilling in a tent outdoors
yeah,
for 8 days.
absolutely.
That's cool. I get to
Yeah,
just, yeah, I've been to work outside for
go
8 days.
travel. I just got
Yeah.
back from travel in Europe, ran a marathon. Keep doing things at work, keep doing things outside of work. Hug your kids, hug your wife. Whatever. I mean, it's just live life, man. This isn't the end all be all. We enjoy doing this. Sometimes I think it's an avenue for Neil to probably let off some steam in a PG-13 way, and for me to facilitate the conversation in some format. But we do enjoy doing this, and because of that, we ask that you all make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, leave a like, leave your comment, your reaction to the Tennessee loss here, and if you're listening on audio formats, please rate and review the show. Leave a 5-star review. Helps bring Gator Nation more great content. So, from all of us here at the In All Kinds Weather Forecast, another episode. Your host, Chris Yanes, and your co host, Neil Schulman, signing off.